You decide you are going to read 20 pages a day. For the first 6 days, it feels almost luxurious. You are energized, you feel proud of yourself, and you even snap a photo of the book sitting next to your coffee cup to post online.
We all love that day one aesthetic.
We really do. But then day 9 arrives, and suddenly the book is just a book. Picking it up feels exactly like dragging heavy furniture across a carpeted room.
It becomes a chore.
A massive chore. Why does our own biology suddenly turn against us? Welcome to TalkKast. We are going to make sense of that invisible wall we all inevitably hit.
That invisible wall you hit on day 9 is just incredibly common. Understanding the science behind it completely changes how we view our own behavior. I mean, it is not a moral failing.
That is a huge relief to hear.
It really is. It has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of personal discipline or, some fundamental flaw in your character.
Because that is exactly what our inner monologue tells us it is. We immediately default to thinking we are just fundamentally lazy.
The drop-off you experience is entirely mechanical. Your brain is simply switching from a novelty-driven mode to a repetition-driven mode.
That handoff from novelty to repetition is profoundly uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable by design.
We usually assume that if something feels this incredibly hard, we must be doing it wrong. But we are going to explore why that handoff feels so heavy and why it is actually supposed to feel that way.
You are moving away from the exhilarating energy of newness. You are entering a phase where the behavior has to survive on boring, unglamorous consistency.
You are watching the habit stop being an exciting mood and start becoming actual neurological wiring.
That is exactly it. To understand why day 9 feels so empty, we really have to look at why day 1 felt like magic. Week 1 is incredibly generous to us.
It feels generous because everything is fresh. You buy the new running shoes, you clear off your desk to create a study space, and it feels like you have unlocked an entirely new version of yourself.
Novelty is basically one of the brain's absolute favorite attention magnets. New routines come with new cues, new environments, and a general sense of uncertainty.
And that uncertainty keeps the brain deeply engaged.
Precisely. When outcomes are not fully predicted, your brain's learning systems stay entirely online. Because it doesn't know exactly what to expect, motivation feels surprisingly abundant.
So if my conscious brain is burning through that early excitement, how does the chemistry actually work beneath the surface? I mean, we hear so much about dopamine in popular culture.
We really do. People often treat dopamine like a magical motivation juice that just magically makes you want to do difficult things.
Which is a huge misconception.
A massive one. Dopamine functions far more as a pursuit and learning signal. It closely tracks what neuroscientists call prediction errors.
A prediction error meaning a surprise.
Exactly. A prediction error occurs when a reward is surprising or simply better than you expected. When that happens, the dopamine signal fires very strongly.
That makes total sense.
Imagine you decide to take a brand new route to work, and you stumble across a beautiful local coffee shop you never knew existed. Your brain floods with dopamine.
It does this to ensure you remember that exact route so you can find the reward again.
Right. It is essentially highlighting that specific behavior in fluorescent yellow marker so you do not forget it.
But once you drive past that exact same coffee shop every single day for a month, the reward becomes fully predicted.
Your brain knows it is there. The surprise factor drops to 0, and because there is no prediction error, that massive dopamine boost completely vanishes.
I think of that early brain chemistry like startup funding for a brand new company. You have not built a profitable, self-sustaining business yet, which would be the fully established habit.
But the novelty gives you this massive influx of venture capital cash.
Exactly. You do not feel the brutal daily operating costs because you are freely spending that novelty capital. You feel absolutely invincible for those first few days.
The startup funding entirely masks the reality of your situation. The fading of that initial enthusiasm is not a flaw in your character. It is simply habituation.
The brain is just doing its job.
It is conserving attention and energy by reducing arousal once a stimulus becomes predictable.
If we were constantly hyperstimulated by every single routine thing we did, we would never have the mental bandwidth to learn anything new or react to actual dangers in our environment.
So when people claim they have mysteriously lost their motivation to run or read or meditate, they are actually just describing the end of that novelty bonus.
The neurological startup funding has officially run out.
And once that bonus is gone, you finally feel the true, unshielded price of the behavior.
In week 1, the internal chemistry masked the difficulty. The habit was still objectively hard to perform physically, but your body made the hard work feel incredibly worth it.
By week 2, the chemistry normalizes, making the exact same habit feel abruptly heavier.
Because your schedule is still your exact same schedule. You still have the same 24 hours in the day.
But now the activity competes with mundane realities like doing the laundry, making dinner, and the immediate familiar comfort of the couch.
And this is when your brain starts asking why you are voluntarily doing this difficult thing.
That is the first truly honest question of the entire process.
That brings up a fascinating physiological reality. Once that startup funding runs out, the habit suddenly feels incredibly heavy. We need to explore why it feels physically exhausting to just put on running shoes or open a textbook.
It literally feels like actual physical labor just to make the decision.
It really does. We have to consider the intense metabolism of the brain here.
Brains are the ultimate energy misers. They are shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressures to spend energy as efficiently as possible.
And automatic habits run on highly efficient circuits.
They do. They primarily involve a deep brain region called the basal ganglia.
Let's clarify what that looks like in practice. The basal ganglia is essentially the brain's biological autopilot circuitry.
It handles things like tying our shoes, driving our normal route to work, or locking the front door.
These are things we do without even realizing we're doing them.
The basal ganglia requires very little metabolic energy to operate. It is incredibly efficient. But in week 2, your new habit is not automated yet.
It has not been handed over to the basal ganglia for long-term storage.
Exactly. You are relying entirely on the prefrontal cortex, which is part of the brain responsible for conscious control and executive function.
So you are relying on remembering the plan, actively resisting the urge to sit down, and forcing yourself to stay engaged when the activity becomes tedious.
That effortful cognitive control carries a massive energetic cost. We are not just talking about mental fatigue as a metaphor. We are talking about actual biological resources.
Synaptic plasticity literally demands calories.
Rewiring the brain to learn this new habit is expensive. You are paying the absolute highest metabolic price for the behavior right at this moment.
I am basically paying full price before the automation discount kicks in.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it.
I have to push back here, though, and play devil's advocate for a moment. If my brain is sending me a powerful, undeniable effort signal that says this new routine is too heavy, shouldn't I listen to my body?
That is a very common question.
We are constantly taught by modern wellness culture to trust our intuition. If I am standing in the kitchen at 8 o'clock at night, staring at a bag of potato chips versus the raw ingredients for a complex salad, and the mere thought of chopping vegetables feels agonizing, maybe this specific habit just isn't right for me.
That exact thought process is the ultimate trap. We call it the failure illusion.
The failure illusion.
Your brain interprets the friction as a diagnostic tool. It takes a very real biological signal, which is the physical discomfort of cognitive effort, and draws the completely wrong psychological conclusion from it.
It tells you that you are failing because it hurts.
It tells you the goal is wrong, the method is unsustainable, or that you are simply not the kind of person who has the genetic makeup to achieve this.
When in reality, feeling that immense cognitive effort at day 10 is just biological proof that the behavior has not become automatic yet.
You are misinterpreting a standard metabolic cost report as a negative personality test.
That is a profound reframing. Compounding that feeling of failure is the simple fact that the results we actually want are nowhere to be seen.
You are putting in all this cognitive effort, you are fighting your own biology, and the mirror or the bank account looks exactly the same as it did on day 1.
You are facing a terrible deal from the brain's perspective. You have extremely high immediate costs paired with heavily delayed payoffs.
The costs of a new habit are entirely immediate.
If you decide to start cooking healthy meals at home, the dirty dishes pile up that very night. The soreness from a new workout hits you the next morning.
But the health payoffs or the significant financial savings are delayed by months or even years.
When the physical environment is not rewarding you yet, the brain leans even harder on the desire for internal motivation.
And we already established that the internal motivation, that novelty dopamine, is fading rapidly.
You are caught in a miserable void where neither your internal chemistry nor your external environment is providing any meaningful reward.
This biological timeline perfectly explains the phenomenon we explored and why most people quit the gym after 3 weeks.
The physical soreness is an immediate punishment, but the actual cardiovascular or strength gains take months to materialize.
That delay creates a deep vulnerability. We have to dispel a very comforting myth about habit formation right now.
Which myth is that?
Forming a new habit does not erase your old habits. It simply creates competition in the brain. Your old habits do not die. They just wait in the background for a moment of weakness.
They wait because they're highly efficient. Old routines have well-worn neurological triggers and incredibly low control costs.
They deliver immediate, predictable comfort. We refer to this underlying gravitational pull as baseline bias.
Baseline bias.
Your brain will naturally drift back to the path of least resistance, especially when you are stressed or tired.
A difficult week depletes your available prefrontal control energy. It makes those old, efficient loops completely irresistible.
So a busy week at work does not mean you lack willpower or character. It is just a matter of resource depletion.
Losing the initial spark of motivation is actually the exact moment real habit formation begins, because you can no longer rely on emotional gifts from your neurochemistry.
You have to actively engineer the repetition.
If we cannot rely on motivation, and our brains naturally want to default to those highly efficient old habits to save calories, we need practical mechanics. We need to figure out how to structurally survive week 2 without burning out entirely.
We need to build a structural bridge. You must design your habit so it can survive when your energy is low, your patience is entirely gone, and the rewards are still completely invisible.
Waiting until you magically feel like doing the work is like anchoring a boat to a cloud. You have to anchor your behavior to something real and tangible. Let's walk through the specific tools to do that.
The first crucial tool in this engineering process is establishing a minimum viable effort. You must decide in advance what absolutely counts as a win on a terrible day.
So if my overarching goal is reading 20 pages a day, my minimum viable effort might be reading just one single page.
Or walking for 5 minutes instead of an hour. The objective in week 2 is not to impress yourself with massive achievements. The goal is solely to keep the neurological circuit alive.
Missing one opportunity is not fatal, but repeated avoidance prevents automaticity from building.
Every time you perform the action, even in a microdose, you reinforce the synaptic pathway. Minimum viable effort makes success possible, even when you have absolute zero motivation.
It prevents the chain from breaking. You also mentioned anchoring to something physical. That means building a cue, not a mood.
You cannot tie a habit to a feeling of being energized, because energy constantly fluctuates based on sleep, stress, and diet. You must anchor the behavior to a stable physical context.
Placing your running shoes right by the front door is a classic example. Stability lowers friction.
Your brain is far more willing to execute a behavior when the launch sequence looks the exact same every single time. It doesn't have to figure out where the shoes are or what time you are going or what route you are taking.
By standardizing the cue, you remove a dozen micro decisions. Every single decision you remove saves a tiny bit of that precious cognitive energy in the prefrontal cortex.
We also need to anticipate the inevitable roadblocks using if-then planning. Week 2 is when you discover your real, unavoidable obstacles.
You realize you are consistently too tired after work, or that your mornings are simply too chaotic to meditate.
Exactly.
Okay, but what happens when I get home at 6 o'clock and I'm just bone tired? My brain isn't going to care about minimum viable effort. It just wants the couch.
That is exactly why you cannot make the decision at 6 o'clock. You have to make the decision at 8 in the morning using if-then planning.
If-then planning pre-solves those exact problems.
You decide, if I am too tired to cook dinner, then I will make a simple 5-minute rep.
That entirely removes the need for a real-time debate. You do not have to waste mental energy standing in front of the open refrigerator deciding what to do, because the decision was already made when you were calm and rational.
You are significantly reducing the need for on-the-spot conscious control. Another vital tactic in this toolkit is creating closure rewards.
We need to physically replace the lost novelty dopamine with a reliable finish line signal.
That could be making a warm cup of tea immediately after finishing your reading.
How does something that simple actually help rewire the brain?
The brain needs a clear boundary to know the effortful period has ended. An audio chime on your phone or sitting down with a cup of tea creates a tiny artificial prediction error.
It gives the brain immediate confirmation that the behavioral loop was worth running.
It is a substitute reward that bridges the dopamine gap until the long-term benefits finally arrive. It leverages basic conditioning to manufacture a short-term win.
So how do we track progress without turning it into a guilt trip? Self-monitoring often feels like building a legal case against yourself when you inevitably miss a day. It can feel deeply punishing.
Self-monitoring should maintain continuity, not provoke self-judgment. A simple chain of check marks on a calendar is highly effective.
It keeps the behavior mentally visible and allows you to physically see your consistency.
Seeing a long chain of check marks serves as another form of immediate visual reward.
Finally, we have to talk about environment design. We have to make the old baseline incredibly inconvenient.
If your conscious brain is burning through calories just trying to remember to read, you have to structurally relieve that pressure.
If old habits are triggered by environmental cues, you must ruthlessly manage your exposure to those cues.
Logging out of your streaming applications forces you to type in a complicated password every time you want to watch television.
Or keeping junk food in an opaque container on a high shelf instead of a clear glass jar right on the kitchen counter. You are deliberately increasing the friction for the behavior you want to avoid.
You are making the couch or the junk food physically less efficient to access.
You increase the control cost of the old behavior and heavily reduce the control cost of the new behavior. It aligns perfectly with how the brain naturally allocates physical effort.
You stop trying to stubbornly out-argue your old habits and start outsmarting your environment.
This brings all of these mechanical structural strategies right back to our internal emotional experience. We have to completely change how we view this difficult phase of change.
We need to redefine the second week entirely. It is not the phase where you find out if you are a highly disciplined, superior person.
It is simply the phase where you learn commitment under neutrality.
Most of our lives are lived in a state of emotional neutrality. We rarely exist in a state of peak motivation.
Learning to quietly keep a promise to yourself when you feel absolutely nothing is the true core of long-term habit formation. The second week stops being a failure zone and starts being your apprenticeship.
That is a beautiful way to summarize it. Discomfort in week 2 does not mean the goal is wrong. It means the motivational subsidy has finally ended.
You are no longer just dreaming about the habit, you are actually building it brick by brick. But understanding this biology leaves you with a much larger, slightly unsettling question to consider.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Think about how modern technology platforms are explicitly engineered to exploit this exact biological weakness. Every time you try to build a difficult offline habit, there is a billion-dollar algorithm waiting to offer you the ultimate path of least resistance.
They weaponize your baseline bias to pull you right back to a screen.
Your day 9 discomfort isn't just a biological hurdle you have to clear. It is a structural, ongoing battle for your own attention in a world designed to distract you.
Thanks for listening to TalkKast.